What would you say was probably your biggest challenge growing up that probably also you carried into college with you?
My parents divorced when I was about 8 years old, and that rocked my world a lot as a child. I was diagnosed with learning disabilities at a young age when I was in elementary school, and school was very difficult for me. I feel like I sort of had an awakening, and um, hi, and welcome to the Ordinary Brave podcast. We're so glad that you joined us today. And today I have one of my most favorite guests of all that I will ever have on this podcast, and it is my husband, Scott Parkinson. And originally I was going to have him on here to tell his story. He has a really incredible personal story, but he has decided that he's going to switch it up and he is going to interview me today. All right, Scott. So I'm handing the podcast over to you.
Well, that's great. This is the first time that I have ever done a podcast, and I can't think of a better person that I would like to interview than my wife, Kelly McCorkle Parkinson. I think it's interesting that we are doing this interview because she is definitely not an ordinary person. She is an extraordinary person and has done a lot of extraordinary things. But we'll get to that. I know that your listeners have heard a lot about your story and a lot about your background growing up. So why don't we start there? Just tell us a little bit about your family of origin and what it was like growing up and those types of things.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina, and I have two siblings. And my parents divorced when I was about 8 years old, and that rocked my world a lot as a child. And but that's really how I found Jesus, was through my parents' divorce. It got us in church, and I just felt a love from the Lord like I'd never felt before. And that's how I became a Christian, was through that hard experience. And then both of my parents remarried, and my mom and stepdad had my younger sister, Courtney, and I'm 13 years older than her, so I was kind of like a little mama to her. But just, that was a pretty hard thing to go through in a childhood, but I'm also grateful for it. Um, so.
So your mother remarried when you were how old?
I was 11.
You were 11. Okay. And she married a man named Eddie Sisson,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was it like growing up in the Sisson household? What was your family like? What was it like being in your house?
Well, I think it was pretty awesome. And both of my parents are school teachers. And so school was very much a part of our lives. My dad was a head baseball coach and a football coach at the high school that I went to. And so I felt like the school was a second home for us in many ways. My dad is an amazing coach, and really not only just on the field, but invested in the lives of kids off the field. And my mom is a special ed teacher, and she is just an amazing woman. She's a very, very hard worker. She's still teaching today. She's like in her 49th year of teaching. And I would say that probably of all of her years of teaching, she's probably the first teacher to arrive on the campus each day and probably one of the last to leave, because she's just a very hardworking person. And she really tried to instill that a lot into her children. But my mom also has a heart of gold and was very community service oriented. But a lot of that service also kind of intertwined with her role in special education. And so I remember one year we had one of her students live with us for several months because they had a house fire. And one of her Down syndrome students, Keldrick, lived with us for about 3 or 4 months, and it was a blast. And that's just my mom. She just opened her house, and it was easier on that family to let us just keep him during that time, because I think they were living out of a hotel, and it just gave them more space. And then he could ride with mom to school. But that's just one small example. But we had a lot of fun. We laughed a lot. My brother was huge into wrestling growing up, and so I was constantly wrestling him, it seems like. And my sister, when she was born, she was just kind of like the icing on the cake. And I always just say she just made everything better. She's kind of like the glue of the family.
Well, it sounds like that you grew up in a happy, healthy home. Tell us a little bit about where your family is now. Your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. What are they into these days?
Well, my family all mostly still lives back in South Carolina. As I said, my mom's still teaching. My dad actually just retired for the first time this year, but my mom is making him still sub. So he is substitute teaching and still in the school quite a bit. My brother graduated from West Point Military Academy, served in the military for 5 years, and then even after in the National Guard. And he's married and has 3 kids, and they just recently moved back to South Carolina. He works for Michelin, and his job has had them traveling all over the world. But he is finally back there, and I'm thankful because my parents get to see their grandkids a whole lot more since we don't live close by, and it's just great to be able to see them get together. And my sister is married, and she actually lives in Los Angeles, right in the heart of Hollywood. She is a realtor for a well-known real estate business there, and she is just thriving and successful and has a good marriage, and she's super involved there. Like, she serves on the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and every time I turn around, she's volunteering on some kind of board or something and serving. And then my dad and stepmom also live in South Carolina, in the Columbia area.
Wow, great. So let's fast forward maybe to your college days. What would you say was probably your biggest challenge growing up that probably also you carried into college with you?
Well, I was diagnosed with learning disabilities at a young age when I was in elementary school, and school was very difficult for me. I have dyslexia and auditory processing deficits, as you know. And but in a school atmosphere, that was much harder, like when you're sitting at a desk and trying to learn every day and read well. And my dyslexia actually shows up more in numbers. It does show up in letters, but numbers are what really gets confused and backwards for me, which now they have a new term for that called dyscalculia. So probably if I was tested again, I would show up as having dyscalculia. But so that just along the way, it just made school difficult to the point where teachers told my parents that I may not even graduate from high school or be able to go to college. And
But you did graduate.
I did. And it's not so learning disabilities aren't always, usually people have high IQs that have learning disabilities, but it's just the way that they process things that they don't come across right. So they were more worried about me passing what South Carolina had at that time. And I know Tennessee has a state standard test too, but in South Carolina it was called the exit exam. And you only have like 3 times to pass it, and I only passed it on my third try. But it was always the math and writing portion that were hard for me. But I did pass it. At that time, I did not think I was going to college. I had big dreams to dance on Broadway, but the Lord had different plans. And it's kind of a long story to talk about it all, and maybe that can be another podcast for another time. But through pageants, actually, is what led me to college. And I never thought I would go. I ended up going to North Greenville University 2 years after I graduated high school. And it's because I won scholarship money, or I probably would not have pursued it. And I won scholarship money to go there. And while college was challenging, it was different for me. Now, this was a smaller college. It was also a Christian university. And I talked with one of the professors before I started that fall, and she just really encouraged me about the smaller class sizes and how she really thought that the professors would work with me as I had challenges. But I also feel like my brain was maybe developing more and matured more, because college actually did not feel nearly as hard as what all of like high school, middle school, and elementary school felt for me. Even though I did have to work harder at things, and it still took me a long time to complete certain tasks, things just seemed to make more sense to me and were more clear. I also wonder if it's because I enjoyed what I was studying, which was mass communications with an emphasis in broadcasting. So I was actually enjoying what I was studying about.
So when you graduated college, what was your GPA?
It was a 3.79, I believe.
Okay. We'll call that a 3.8.
It's been a while. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but I think that's what it was. But I graduated cum laude, and I actually didn't even know that I was graduating cum laude till the day of graduation, when I was showing up and they were lining up all the graduates. And a lady that works there, Shirley Bain, at North Greenville University, she kind of walked up to me and she's like, "You're missing something. You're missing a gold rope." And I just thought, oh, I like dropped it out of the package or something. I didn't even know what a gold rope meant because academics had always been such a struggle for me. I was never one of those, to receive all these academic awards or anything. And she was like, "No, Kelly, you graduated cum laude. You're graduating, with honors." And so I'm like walking down the aisle, to graduation, and I'm looking at my parents like pointing to this, like, "What? Can you believe this?" And
Not bad for someone that they said would never even graduate high school.
yeah. Well, I mean, I give the Lord a lot of credit, and He has shown me a lot of grace. But I also am thankful that I grew up in a house of teachers who really, and my mom being a special ed teacher, just really knew different ways to help me cope. And I learned through the years coping mechanisms too, ways that I could best learn. And so I'm just thankful that I had that kind of support at home. And I'm also just naturally stubborn. Do you know that about me?
Really? No.
So just naturally stubborn, and I just kind of have this tenacity where I don't like to give up. I've got a fight in me. And so I've always kind of had a little bit of this, I knew that there was going to be a struggle, and I knew people had said I may not graduate. And so there was this kind of like this little voice in
Game
my,
on.
yes, there was that voice in my head like, well, I'll show you.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like a strong woman. All right. Tell us a little bit maybe about your days studying dance and how maybe you thought that you would pursue a career in dance, and then maybe from there, maybe into your time in pageants.
Well, I started actually taking dance when I was 3 years old, but not only my school teachers, but even my dance teachers came to my parents and were like, "You're wasting your time and money, paying for Kelly to take dance," because they were basically like, everybody's going this way and Kelly's going that way. And, I really loved it though. Like, I didn't view myself in the dance classroom as being awkward or different. I could always tell it in the school classroom that I was the slowest or, really struggling when everybody else wasn't, but I didn't see it in the dance studio like my teachers saw it. But I kind of just joke and say, I don't know what happened, but I feel like in middle school, I don't really know how to explain it, but I just feel like the Lord just touched my head in some way and just said rhythm, because it was all of a sudden, like in middle school, dance started to become very easy for me and natural for me. And my dance teachers, they began to take notice of me, and I could just tell that I was kind of rising to the top and part of that. And really what that did for me was give me a lot of confidence. And it also gave me an outlet, because in school I was not at the top at all. And so dance really kind of gave me an outlet to feel good about myself, and also kind of get away from something that was really hard. And finally I had something that I was good at. I was very fortunate where I went to school in Greenville County in South Carolina. They have a school there called the Fine Arts Center. So in high school, literally every day of high school, all 4 years, I went half a day to this art school and danced half a day of school, and then did my academics the other half. I think that's how I survived high school, and probably a good reason why I graduated from high school, because it just, again, gave me that outlet to do something that I enjoy, and then I could then spend the rest of the day working on something I did not enjoy and just doing what I had to do. But I also was a part of a semi-professional ballet group. I would call it semi-professional. Greenville Ballet, just top-notch teaching and instruction there and technique, and just was doing that in the afternoons and my evenings as well. So like when you consider people who are doing travel ball now, it was almost, that's really like what ballet was for me. I was doing it nonstop, but even during my school hours. And because school was so hard, I had talked to my parents, and I really just did not think college was going to be an option for me. And I just began to pursue those dreams. My dance teachers also just really instilled in me that they thought that I could be a dancer. And So my junior year of high school, I actually spent the summer in New York City as a 16-year-old alone, traveling there and going to classes every day at Joffrey Ballet. And then the following summer, I received another opportunity to go back to New York and this time study with Alvin Ailey's dance company. And I had always had this dream that I would dance with them or be on Broadway. Alvin Ailey is like primarily an African American dance group, but they do a lot of spiritual dances, and they're well known for this one piece called Revelations, and they do a lot of, it's just kind of a lot of dances that really are kind of old spirituals and songs that they use and kind of represent baptism and, just all sorts of things. And I just always thought, if I was going to dance, I'd want to do it like that for the Lord and for it to be spiritual. And so I went that summer again after my senior year and went there to study. And then I'd also tried out for the Rockettes. There were just a bunch of things that I tried to do there, but the Lord just really made it clear to me one day in a quiet time. I was spending time in the Word, and He just spoke to me and was like, this is not what I have for you. I want you to use your gifts and talents to serve others, not yourself, is really what I got from that message from Him. And I didn't quite know what that meant, but I moved back home and just really prayed and sought the Lord. And then, like I said, years later, I ended up in college.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your pageant days. How did you get into pageants, and just walk us through that whole process?
Well, I really didn't do pageants growing up, as you see, like a lot of kid pageants and things. I did not do any of that. Now, my high school had pageants, and you were nominated to be in those, and so I did those. But it's kind of a totally different thing. Now, my senior year of high school, my mom's hairdresser convinced me to compete in a local pageant for the USA system, the Miss USA system. And he basically got everything borrowed for me, the evening gown, everything that I had to wear. And so I competed in that pageant and I won. So I became Miss Greenville Teen USA.
Not surprising that you won a contest related to looks.
You're sweet. Anyways, I went on to compete in the state pageant that year and got 4th runner-up, and thought it was fun, had a really great experience, but just still was just kind of like, I was really into dance, that at that time, that was my focus, and I was going to dance, and I thought pageants were okay. So what happened is, once I moved home from New York and I started figuring out like what was my next step, how did the Lord really want me to use my talents to serve others, I started teaching dance at a local inner city community area called Phyllis Wheatley Community Center, and was using my dance there, but still trying to just pursue like, what is it the Lord wants me to do? And somebody contacted me and said, we've heard about the dancing that you're doing and the instruction that you're giving. How would you like to come and dance as an entertainer in the Miss South Carolina pageant? And I thought, well, I've never thought about that before, but I like to dance and it sounds like fun. And I was just looking for different opportunities. And so I danced in the Miss South Carolina pageant that summer just as an entertainer. So, as the girls competed, I'd kind of come out in between things and dance. And but that experience really opened my eyes, because I think I had just this perception of what pageant girls were and how they are. And at that experience really just showed me that these girls are very smart and that they all have a talent. And a lot of them are very passionate about serving their communities because they all have a platform that they stand for and that they push. And at the end of that week, after being there all week for that pageant and being a part of it, one of the men on the board just came to me and they just said, I've been watching you all week, and I think one day you are going to be Miss South Carolina. And I just kind of laughed and I said, well, thank you. You're so sweet, but you have no idea. I can't even write a phone number down straight. And you think I'm going to be Miss South Carolina. But what that man did was really plant a seed in my heart. And it's just something that kind of stayed with me. It didn't leave my mind. And I guess it was about 2 years, maybe a year and a half later after that I finally took my first step and competed in a local pageant, which I won scholarship money. That's what got me to start pursuing college. And then I went on to compete in Miss South Carolina, but I actually competed in the Miss South Carolina pageant 3 times. Did
And
not
how old were you the first time you competed?
19.
Okay.
And then I would have been 21 and then 22 the year that I won. And I did not come close to winning the first 2 times when I was 19 and 21, but I needed more scholarship money, which kind of took me back to doing it again. And I'm also competitive. So I like the goal and setting a goal to try to win and achieve different things. And it was a great experience for me. Obviously, it paid for all of my education. I was not in debt, but also just the opportunities that I had to speak and share about my platform, which was learning disabilities. And so I shared a lot in schools and with students and to parents and families to encourage them as your child gets a diagnosis, or somebody might label them or might say, hey, this is going to be hard for them, that they don't have to let that define who they are.
So what is it like being Miss South Carolina? What do you do all day, all week, like that year? What does it look like? What are some things that happen?
Well, I think it looks different in each state for each state winner, but in South Carolina, it was a full-time job. And so I truly traveled every day. As I said, my platform was learning disability, so I spoke in a lot of public schools. I spoke over 400 times in public schools in South Carolina, sharing my story, and also really just sharing with students the importance of goal setting, setting dreams, just trying to inspire them and encourage them to reach for something themselves as well. I spoke in a lot of churches, sharing my testimony and a lot of different civic organizations. And so mainly a lot of speaking and just being a mentor.
And it was also around that period of time that you met your husband, wasn't it?
It was.
So tell us about that. And I mean, I'm sure that I will not be able to keep from chiming in, but you go right ahead.
Well, I was just about to actually go and compete for that 3rd time to be Miss South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we got a phone call at my house. And so in Baptist churches, what happens is when they're bringing like a pastor to come on staff at the church or to be the senior pastor, we call it in view of a call. And we have a committee that interviews all these pastors and they select. So anyways, a lady on the search team called my mom and said, I just want you to know the pastor that we're about to hire is going to be Kelly's husband. And we just started laughing. And, I was like 22 at the time. And a lot of my friends, had just gotten married. They were out of college. And here I was not married. And I always kind of felt a little bit like people were trying to get all the single ladies with somebody. But when you came to the church and shared your testimony in front of the church, I was like, he's cute and he loves Jesus. I'm like, this is a good combination here.
Now, had the committee also said something to your husband at the time? Did he have any idea that they were playing matchmaker?
Well, I know that they had not, since I know you, but I walked down after service that day thinking that maybe they had mentioned to you, like, hey, there's a young lady in the church, since they had contacted me. And so I said something like, now you better watch out for those old ladies because they'll try to set you up with the girls in church or the single ladies in church. And you just looked at me just like cold and you were like, I don't date girls in my church. So I turned around and I was like, challenge accepted.
Game on. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I was irresistible, and yeah.
You were.
Okay, so what was your life like after that? So you met me, mm-hmm. and you were Miss South Carolina. You were traveling around, mm-hmm. speaking, doing different things. What was
you really like? I wasn't really in church or my home church where you were serving at the time, just because I was traveling and in a lot of other churches. Over that year, it was funny because if I was at church, I was like, okay, I can't really like flirt with him or like him because he's got these rules and we'll just have to be friends. And so like over the years, we just became friends. And I was really a part of your ministry because you were over college and singles, and I was in the singles department at that point because I'd graduated from college. But I took a job and moved to DC after Miss South Carolina, working for Congressman Jim DeMint. I was a legislative correspondent, and when that job took me to DC, it kind of helped you break your policy because I wasn't in your church, and you started flirting with me over AOL Instant Messenger.
Instant Messenger. Wow. That brings back memories. I believe I still have that conversation that I copied and pasted
Do you?
and saved on my computer. Yes.
Well, you can see how you flirted with me.
Well, I did, and I enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I did. So,
Me too.
so it's really hard for me not to chime in here.
You can chime in.
Yeah, I definitely did like you the whole time, you know that, and wanted to date you the whole time, but there was just kind of this barrier. But as soon as you moved away to DC, certainly I felt a freedom to flirt. So, how long was it between the time that we met, the time that we started dating? Was that, let's see, we met in 2002. We started dating in December of 2004 or something like
Yes,
that.
December 27th, 2004.
Yeah.
And then we got engaged on December 27th, 2005.
Yeah.
And then married on May 6th, 2006.
Yes.
We're
we
about to
did.
celebrate 20 years.
Amen. Next month, 20 years of a life sentence. All right. So, tell us a little bit about your time on The Amazing Race and what that was like.
So The Amazing Race was before we started dating, just
Right.
shortly before we started dating. And I competed on that show with a guy that I dated before. We had actually broken up before we filmed the show. And it was an incredible experience to go on that show. I had never been out of the country before. And what that experience really did was open my heart and eyes to missions and a love for the world. I always joke and tell people we went to 11 different countries. One of them was India, and India was the hardest place for me when we went on The Amazing Race. I experienced true culture shock when we were there, and really had a hard time the whole time I was there. And when I came home, I told my parents, like, I'll go back every place we went except India. I'll never go back. And then a horrible tsunami happened a year later, or actually right after we filmed. We were there in the fall of 2004, and the tsunami maybe happened like weeks later. But I went back to India a year later to help with tsunami relief and fell in love with the country. And as you know, I've been back ever since. I think I've been to India over 20 times. I go at least once a year.
And you have a nonprofit.
Yeah, I have a nonprofit that developed out of all of that. Because in my experience and time in India, I've learned a lot about just their culture and Asian cultures in general. They're one of the higher cultures for sex trafficking. And a lot of that is because girls are not valued in general to have as children there. And in India, they're often just discarded once they're born, and or just put out on the street before they're of marriage age because of the dowry system. And there's just so much I could go into there. But they often end up being trafficked or used as slaves. And
So what's the name of the nonprofit?
The nonprofit is Loft 218, and Loft is an acronym for the least of these, because the Bible talks about taking care of the least of these. And then 218 comes from a scripture in Nehemiah. I was doing a Bible study in Nehemiah when I really felt like the Lord led me to start this nonprofit. And that scripture in particular is Nehemiah goes to the people and he's like, we're going to rebuild the wall. And the people are like, let us rise up and build. And I just felt like that was the message that I wanted to give these young ladies, that we were here to help them rise up and build their lives again. And so the big thing that our nonprofit does is we have assisted people as they've rescued girls from trafficking, but we've also helped 3 families who have taken in these girls to their homes. So they're local Indian families that just have a heart for orphans and helping girls. And so my nonprofit comes alongside of these families because they're just regular families. I mean, it's not like they're these rich, wealthy people that can take in all these children. And so we just come alongside them and help financially, help pay for the girls' education because you have to pay for it there. It's not free. We help with medical bills. We help school supplies. We help them throw birthday parties, any kind of extra expense that they need on a monthly basis. That's what my nonprofit comes alongside of. It's almost like I don't know, almost like a foster care. India doesn't have a formalized foster care system. But I would just say we're kind of acting in that way. We're kind of just making sure these kids are taken care of, and we're helping support them financially.
Amen. Praise the Lord.
We just had our first graduate. When I say graduate, I mean like she finished high school, and she wants to be a baker. And so right now, it's really actually hard to bake in India. If you have not ever been there, they're not known for their desserts and their sweets. And so they don't have a lot of like baking schools. And so we're trying to find a place for her to go to pursue that dream. But my hope is that maybe these girls will be like future homes that LAFA can support, and that they'll open their doors to girls in need as well.
Okay. All right. So we've talked about dance, Miss South Carolina, college, Amazing Race, your time working for Congressman DeMint. Let's move into just your life as a mom, a homeschool mom, and tell us a little bit about that.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
Well, I always knew I wanted a lot of children. When I was younger, I loved The Sound of Music, which is a movie. You probably have not seen it because it's a musical. Captain Von Trapp.
I mean, I've heard of it, but
That's one area we need to work on. But they had seven children in that movie, in the musical. And I used to be like, that's what I want. I want 7 children, like the Von Trapp family. And
now, can I just point out, I know this is your interview, but it's a little bit odd for someone with your life experience and all of your capabilities and all of your accomplishments and everything that you have done to be a young lady in her mid-20s, having worked in D.C., lived in New York City, been on a reality TV show, had a measure of notoriety through Miss South Carolina, and now you just want to be a mom?
Well, I've really always just wanted to be a mom. I mean, when my parents would talk to me about what do you want to do, I would be like, I just want to be a mom and a wife. And they would be like, well, you can't do that till you have a husband, so let's pick a career path. But it's just something that's always been in my heart. And that's, I think, the way the Lord has just made me.
Because I could really see how a lot of people might look at that and think that you had a whole life before you that you could have lived and really have done anything that you wanted to do with the sky's the limit, but you chose to marry a preacher and have a pile of kids and be a stay-home mom.
Well, I'll be honest, like when our oldest Seth was just born and we moved to a church in North Carolina, I remember sitting on a swing set at that church and crying with Seth in my arms because I wasn't really sure what my identity was anymore. You know, I had done so many of those other things and now my life was looking a lot different. But the Lord just met me there in that swing set and on that playground and just really showed me that what I was doing as a mom was more valuable than anything else. And that, because my heart was that I really want, like I kept saying, Lord, I just want to do these big things for you. I want to help change the world for you. And God just helped me see like I am when I'm just being a mom, because investing in the children and loving them and pointing them towards Him is one of the biggest things that I could do, and that I was raising world changers. And so when He met me there, I just had a peace about what that was going to look like from from there on, and now we have 6 beautiful children, 2 that are adopted, and never thought I would homeschool, though. That was never on my radar at all, especially being the daughter of 2 public school teachers. Most of my life, my parents were like, we all talked about, well, homeschooling was weird. And to be honest, there are some weird homeschoolers. I mean, there's weird everybody and everything now, but just never thought that. But when we moved to Cookeville, that's when the Lord laid it on my heart to homeschool. And I'm so thankful because it gave me even more time with our kids. And now we have one that's graduated in college. And honestly, that was probably the most nerve-wracking thing for me, is just like, are they actually going to be able to go? And with my learning disabilities, I was even kind of nervous. Am I actually going to be able to teach these kids? But I think it made me a better teacher. Not like I'm some great teacher, but I think it's made me more compassionate for the ones that do struggle in our house. And I don't know, it's just, I love my life. I feel like I'm living my dream.
Well,
and you've made my dreams come true.
I feel blessed, and I'm glad God gave you to me and to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, how many kids did you originally want to have? And how many?
Now we're gonna have a debate.
And how many kids did your husband originally want to have?
So early on, I wanted 7. This is way, way back, like middle school, elementary school. And then for some reason, I don't know why, it's probably just because I knew a family or something that had 5 kids and I just thought it was great. So then I narrowed it down to 5. And I was like, 5 sounds like a great number.
Team.
Yeah, basketball team. I was like, 5 sounds like a great number. And I just kind of went into that in my young adulthood thinking I would have 5 kids. But when we started dating, you said you only wanted 2. And I almost broke up with you over that.
I think I said I would never have more than 3.
Yeah.
I think is what I said.
Well,
or no, maybe I said I will never have 5 kids. I think maybe is what I said.
Yeah.
We had a little spat, didn't we?
I don't really remember, but I just remember that I was like, I don't know if I can date this guy if he doesn't want to have a lot of kids.
So how did you finally convince your husband to have more than 3 kids? What did you do?
I mean,
to convince him?
I don't really remember, no, here's the thing. Let me just say. So I also had a heart for adoption because before we got married, when one of my trips to India, I felt like the Lord was like, you need to adopt a little girl from India. So I love to tell our daughter Lila that she was really the first child that was birthed in my heart, before we ever had any kids. So when you were saying, I think you were like, I'll never have more than 3.
Right.
Oh, I know. You said, this is before we got married, that we would have 3 that you would be open to more. Do you remember that?
I think I maybe had said that as a concession, but I don't know that I really meant it. I think maybe I only had an intention of having 3 children. And
you just didn't know how.
I just remember a 5-year anniversary trip where we went on a cruise and we had 2 children, and you had been wanting to try to convince me to have another biological child and to adopt. And I was telling you that you needed to choose between the 2. And then you took me on a cruise.
That's true. So I didn't take you on the cruise.
And manipulate.
No, I was about to say, I did not take you on the cruise to manipulate the situation.
You cheated.
No, I did not cheat.
You did.
So let me tell you.
I had no choice.
No, it's not true. Because let me tell you what really happened. And I don't know if you remember this or not. But because I had kind of been a little mad inside and a little bitter. Were you sensing that? Because I wanted to be able to adopt and have another kid.
Yes.
And I, in my mind, was going to be satisfied with the 4, even though it wasn't 5. And because you were just adamant, like, no, it's got to be one or the other. We're going to have another kid or we're going to adopt. It kind of made me a little bit angry and bitter on the inside. And I spent a lot of time praying, Lord, change his mind. Change his mind. And
then you took me on a cruise.
No.
And you used your womanly ways on me.
No. All right.
You cheated.
No. I remember on the last night of the cruise, I went up to the top of the boat and I was all by myself and it was like blowing wind like crazy. And I couldn't hear anything but just like strong winds blowing. But I just started praying and I remember just giving it over to the Lord and saying, God, I've been angry about all this and bitter because I just really thought this is what was supposed to happen. And I've spent all this time, praying, change my husband. And being on that trip and on that cruise, I had such a great time with you. And I was like, he is such a blessing to me. I don't want to change him. Lord, change me. And then the next day we get off the boat and we are in the car and you say, the Lord has been talking to me, Kelly, and I think it's okay if we adopt and have another kid. And I just couldn't believe it. And then I was mad at myself because I felt like I was the problem the whole time. And if I would have just gotten out of the way and let the Lord work.
And of course, I can tell my side on that too. I mean, just so your listeners will know, for me, God really showed me, I don't remember if it was on the cruise or when it was, but I remember that conversation as we were, I think we had gotten off the cruise boat in Texas or someplace. We were driving back, and I remember saying to you that I feel like that if there is a godly, if there is a godly call, like a godly desire that you have in your heart, that is a call upon me to fulfill that desire. Mm-hmm. And the Lord really showed me that as a husband, that I'm not called to fulfill every desire. And certainly spouses are not called to fulfill every desire that the other spouse has. But if there is a godly desire that a wife has, then that is a call upon the husband to make sure that that's fulfilled. And your desire for 4 children was certainly a godly desire. And the Lord showed me that I couldn't stand in the way of it anymore. And I'm glad that I did not, because our children are an incredible blessing. Mm-hmm. All 6 of them. Mm-hmm. I agreed.
I was going to say, and
now we have 6.
Well, 5 was a huge surprise.
Yes.
We weren't expecting 5, and then 6 showed up in a way that we never expected as an adoption. And
so let's back up to that conversation where we agreed on our way back that we were going to have another child, and we were going to try to have another child, and we were going to adopt a child. Mm-hmm. And then immediately after that, we started the adoption process, and we immediately got pregnant. Mm-hmm. Isn't that right? Isn't that how that happened?
Pretty soon thereafter, yeah. So our family was kind of crazy. We jumped from, I guess we had 2, and then we jumped to 5 kids within a span of,
I think it was like
a year and a half or something.
Something like that.
It was wild.
It was a whirlwind.
Mm-hmm. 100%. But those were some great days.
Those were some very, very
I miss
fun
those days sometimes.
Yes. We were poor. We were busy.
I was exhausted.
Stressed. We were tired. But those were some great days.
Mm-hmm. They were. And then, of course, then we got our little Jordan, number 6, and he's a huge blessing and full of energy.
Yes. All right, so the ages of our kids are?
18, 17, 16, but she's about to turn 17, 14, 12, but about to turn 13, and 8.
That's a spread.
Mm-hmm. It's a good spread.
It's a lot of fun.
Now we just need one more to make 7, and then my childhood dream will...
I mean, at this point... it's just another worker in the house that we're raising up. So.
That's right.
All right, so let's see here. There's a whole lot that we could drill down into some of these things and talk deeper, but let's talk a minute about Cookeville. So we've been here 10 years.
Almost 10, in June.
What's it like being a pastor's wife?
I love being a pastor's wife. In college, I really at one point thought the Lord told me I was going to be a pastor's wife. And then I was like, no, he's just telling me that I will always serve him no matter whose wife I am. So if I'm a teacher's wife or a janitor's wife or an engineer's wife, I can always serve the Lord. But I ended up marrying a pastor, and I love it. I had some awesome pastor's wives in the church that I grew up in. And although our personalities are all different from each other, they were just great women who served and loved people. And so I love being a pastor's wife. I love getting to serve in my church. I love getting to be a part of people's lives. And sometimes we're involved in some of the hardest moments of their lives, and sometimes it's really great moments that they're experiencing. But I love getting to serve my church.
All right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about local politics and your run for city council. So tell us a little bit about how that came in your mind and a little bit about how this has grown as a desire in you.
Well, I mentioned that I worked in DC, so that was kind of my first run being involved in politics. Of course, it was totally different running for office and then working for somebody that already had that position. But I enjoyed it. I loved DC. It was an amazing experience. I would say it's one of the best years of my life. It was such a great experience working there and just a solid group of friends, Christian friends. But then I was kind of thinking that maybe I would run for office one day. A lot of people in South Carolina were kind of pushing me to, as part of the young Republicans, and there's a lot of women Republican groups there, and kind of thought that it may be something that I would pursue. And then I just felt like the Lord totally redirected my life. We got married, you're a pastor, and I was totally game, just to focus in on being mom and wife. And but living here in Cookeville has been an awesome place to live. I love it, and it is an amazing community, and I'm so thankful that the Lord brought us here. And I know when we moved here early on, we were like, man, this is where we want to be forever. This is where we hope that our kids, plant their roots and stay. And then just a couple of years ago, I feel like I sort of had an awakening, and some things had happened here in the community that just really kind of opened my eyes. And I thought, oh, because I feel like, my church is a little bit of a bubble for me. I'm with people that are very like-minded. My homeschool group, I'm with people that are very like-minded. So I feel very comfortable and safe in the groups that I'm in. But I just began to see like, oh, there's some things that are coming into our city that just some values and things that are different that kind of worry me a little bit. I just didn't want Cookeville to change the character of who they are. And I think that began to kind of plant a seed in me. I started joining some prayer groups that were in town, and we were just praying for our city. And it's like more and more things that I learned were happening here that we needed to pray for. God just began to break my heart for our city even more. And then I just began to pray that God would raise people up to run for office, because I knew this was going to be an election season. So I spent a lot of time praying for others to step up, and that God would raise up other people and leaders. And but then it was like the Lord was like, and I'm talking to you. And so, that was something I really deliberated over. You and I spent a long time in conversation, and we entered in a season of fasting also together, because I knew that I did not want to do this and run for office if I didn't have your support, because I know it would be hard on our family, and it already has been in some ways as we're starting.
It's a sacrifice.
Yeah, because I'm gone a lot, and we sat down as a family when we really felt the peace from the Lord and just said, hey, things are going to look different. We need people to step up, and the kids have been really supportive, and they're excited, and I do know that they know that I'm not home as much as I normally am, because I'm just out and about doing a bunch of different things. But I think they understand why, and they're supportive, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, we all know that when you see a need that's on your heart, you don't sit around and hope that somebody else is going to do it. You jump on it and you jump in. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk a little bit maybe about your political views. We know that in local elections, there's not a lot of things in local elections that are the same as like in national elections, but yet we know that someone's political leanings and dispositions definitely come into play even in local elections, and even in making decisions related to local elections. So tell us a little bit just about your political views, just where you stand on the liberal, conservative spectrum, Republican, Democrat spectrum. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first, I want to say that I think local elections are very, very important because they really are what affect our day to day life. Obviously, every election is important from the federal level all the way down. But what the president does at the federal level really may not trickle all the way down to the local level. It's got to go through all of its checks and balances, the Supreme Court, everything is challenged constantly. But it's really at the local level where they can actually make those decisions that are affecting, our daily lives. So I think they're very important. I think our state level is pretty important as well. But I've even learned like certain things are passed at the state level doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to trickle down to the local level. I definitely am conservative. There's no question about it. I don't think you can hear me talk very much and share my values about things and not know that. But I'm definitely conservative
Great.
and Republican.
And Republican.
I support the Republican Party's platform. A lot of it are the conservative values that I share. That kind of cross over into my spiritual life as well. But even their policies, those are things that I support.
Yeah. Okay.
Do I think the Republican Party's perfect? No. But as a whole, what the Republican Party stands for, if you were to go look up their platform, when I look at their principles, those are things that I can get behind.
Yeah. Good. Well, I hope that your listeners have learned a lot about you and a lot about your character. I certainly have enjoyed interviewing you. I enjoy being around you every waking moment that I'm able. And so I hope that this has been informative to everyone who's going to give it a listen.
Well, I still want to have you on like I wanted to originally for you to share your testimony sometime, but
I am not nearly as interesting as you.
that's not true. But anyways, thank you so much for joining our podcast today in The Ordinary Brave. And we hope that it's just been encouraging to you. And if you like what you're hearing, if you'll just like and share, have a great day.